Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or whenever you're dialing into this. It's day 2 of your 3,000 words.
Yeah, and so we have kind of done a bit of the who thing, exploring your character. That's what our prompts were about yesterday, and we've actually gone into what too. We've tried to take some of your work yesterday and move it into the active form so your characters are actually doing something. Because we want to move this story forward. This 3,000 word weekend mini vacay into the depths of your wild writer's heart.
And they've also named their theme park, right? So you've worked on headlines. You've
Yeah,
worked a bit on headlines, so you've got an opening, or from the adventure park, you've got a gate to the adventure park with the big name above it. We know what story we're moving into, and we know who we are as we move into that story, or we might know who we're meeting. But now we're in the park and stuff happens in the park, right? We don't just stand there looking at who's, we do stuff.
yeah. So I was really struck. I'm sure I've read this 100 times, but if you look up Kurt Vonnegut's eight eight pieces of advice for people who want to write a story, I think it's number 3 or 4 is just kind of the one that really resonates for me. But I also feel like 5 other pieces of his advice point in the same direction. And he says, every sentence must do one of two things: reveal a character or advance the action. Got that, Tina? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, yeah, say it again.
Every sentence must do one of two things: reveal a character or advance the action.
Mm.
So, because we're writing tight here, and by writing tight, we're staying on a pretty strict path. We're not, we can't do all of Disneyland in one day, or we can't do all of Disneyland in one day. We're either going to like Star Wars, the Epcot Center, or Harry Potter. So we want to make sure that we make all of our words and all of the stories we tell count.
Mhm.
They're all heading in that same direction, and they're all moving towards this endpoint. Which
Mhm.
maybe we don't know quite yet because we're just at who and what, but let's really focus on the what. What happens? I
Mhm.
don't want to read a story about someone who stayed in bed all day because they were depressed and never got out of bed. It's just not very interesting. It's that person has to like fight hard enough to get out of bed and actually show up at their job, even though they hate their job.
And in the articles where it looks like nothing is happening on the outside, like a depressed person not getting out of bed, those 90,000 words in a book or the 3,000 words in an article show all of them, like the multitude of things that are happening on the inside.
Right.
But something
At
is
least there's thought
happening.
in there, right? It's like, I
Yeah.
can't get out of bed because. So that's
Yep.
an internal fight. Now,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we're going a bit too deep with that, but that's okay. Maybe not.
No, because some people aren't gonna, some of you writing, you're like, well, I'm not doing anything. This is an internal thing. And so yeah, that's where it lives. Or maybe you're writing a leadership book, you don't have a plot driven story. So rather than the happening being, and then this happened, yours might be, then do this because this leads to that. So it's still that journey from here to here, but something has to happen for the reader to be hooked into it.
And then the other piece of that is I think Vonnegut's, previous piece of advice. So advice number 3 is every character has to want something, even if it's a glass of water. So, if we're talking about that depressed person who can't get out of bed, they want something. They might not be able to get out of bed, but they still want something.
Mhm.
And in that want, there is some kind of action, even if it's not physical.
And so to help you with this, specifically in a 3,000 word piece, this is your middle. This is all the things that moves your beginning, which was your hook, your curiosity, your theme park, your that 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 thing, that place you met us at the gate, right? And that takes us to, if we just walked into the Christmas dinner park, we've been met at the door with all of our bags or whatever, and we're ending at the dinner table, right? Having whatever it is that we're having, but all the stuff that happens in the middle. And we specifically thought we would come at this from character driven action. You last night, or whenever it was that you did it, you mapped out your story, your who's, your what's, and your whys. So you've got a list of what happened, and you chose one. This is the thing that happened to this person. So, Meribeth, help me a little bit here. How might we break apart that what happened into a bunch of bite-sized pieces? How would we do that? If they like, I dropped the cup, that's the what happened. How would we break that apart into a good 1,500 chunk in the middle?
Well, I dropped the cup. I mean, is connected to who? So am I me dropping a cup, and did that cup belong to my grandmother and it's now in 1,000 pieces on the floor? Did I drop that cup as a 4-year-old child and someone screamed at me, and that led to a series of cascading events that meant at the age of 18, I don't know, who knows? I did something, right? It's like one the event can be small, but it's connected.
Hmm. And I think what's really interesting about that to me is you just named, so I dropped the cup and then you said, was it my grandmother's cup? As soon as you say grandmother's cup, now I need to know about your grandmother. I need to
Mhm.
know about your grandmother. I need to know why that cup was special from the grandmother. Do you have a memory of of sitting and watching your grandmother have tea when you were a child? Or in the exam, so there's 3 mini paragraphs
Mhm.
right there that you've just given me. Or were you yelled at? It's like, where might that take you, right? What does the verb of yelling, how are you going to tell me about the story of yelling? Where you
Yeah.
had an idea, where are you going to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that wanting piece too, right? Like let's hold wanting in our minds at the same time. If I dropped my grandmother's cup and it landed in 1,000 pieces on the floor, did that cup represent wanting to hold on to my grandmother's memory, which in fact uh is I'm losing that because it's been 30 years since she died. I don't know.
Mhm. Mhm. And so there's so much juicy stuff here, Mary Beth. Because as a writer, often often we'll look at a blank page and go, how am I going to fill these 1,500 words? And or 2,000, if you will. Let's say it's 500 at the beginning, 500 at the end, 2,000 in the middle. Somewhere in there is where it's going to be. What you've just offered is that any detail about the story that happened has a story within a story. And when we can link those stories within a story to the want, either of the author or the want of your reader or the want of the character, that's how it all strings together. But in terms of what to do around this character driven action, the to-do list is all the happenings, and the details around that happenings deserve at least 30 to 250 words. If it's a detail, it didn't just land out of the sky like with nothing attached to it. What's it attached to? And start writing the little pieces around that and see if you can connect it to the want. Where are you going to go?
Yeah, and I guess with details too, I mean, we often get caught up. I think we've all sat there and read those books of like Canadian fiction where it's like, they're describing exactly what kind of tree it is, and you're like, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, that's my memory as a child of it's just like someone's like, "Oh, you should read this book. It's a great Canadian author." Like, you're like, "Oh, geez." Gonna read about trees again, aren't I?
I'm reading about trees and snow. Trees and snow. Okay. There, I know somewhere in this boot camp we're attaching "Don't Move the Body," which is a
Yeah,
piece that I've written. That when you read my pieces are very much like that, like tracking these things that don't seem to be attached, that are absolutely attached,
right.
right?
So it's that attachment piece. There are these little details, and it's like somewhere in that detail, it harnesses it harnesses action. The action is in the details, and the detail is in the action, and they are connected.
And so it's something I'm going to add here. Some of us, if we're learning very linearly or literally, we think action is external, like I'm moving, like I dropped the cup, right? What happened? I dropped the cup. But there's internal action that supports external action, which is like the story of the grandmother or the story of a thousand pieces, and all those almost metaphorical, sometimes metaphorical things that are symbolic things that actually tell the story of how this dropped and why it dropped and what it means to that person when it was dropped. So character driven action is when one way to describe it anyway, is when the action happens, what does that say? What does that, or back to Kurt Vonnegut's, what does that reveal about the
Mhm,
character?
mhm.
Or what does it reveal about the reader, or reveal about the author, or reveal about the next character?
And reveal about why they make the decisions they make, why they do or do not get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. Ooh, gosh, the big learning I just got from this is the attachment of action in writing, like attachment and action. Whew, that was big. All right, well, have fun with that. And if you're totally lost, just go back to the what happened part from yesterday and just write little paragraphs about the things that happened. All of that is also awesome. And if you're writing a personal development book and it's literally tools, what are the tools? And describe those tools in the middle. All right, everybody. Right. See you in a bit.